How Disneyland trash became a beloved snack. Doritos. To create an unforgettable experience, Disneyland was created to invoke the spirit of the American dream, which was bursting with energy, optimism, and creativity. But at that time, nobody knew it would also be a part of the legacy behind one of America's most beloved snacks. Today, we're going to share the unlikely story of how Doritos were created. Did you know that before sales of Doritos rocketed, it was discarded in Disney World's trash since it was supposed to be garbage? So, how did Disneyland trash become a beloved snack? And how did it sell at the rate of 1 million per day? Today, you will know about the real tale of how Disneyland trash became one of the most successful snacks of all time. Turning mishap into chance. Almost 100 years ago, Charles Elmer Doolan's family business failed in the early 1930s as a result of the declining sales, when their ice cream lost its quality. He had a ton of ideas, but he soon realized they weren't practical or original. Even more damaging was the fact that the business was in its worst financial situation ever, as a result of the significant loss in sales and the state of the national economy. To survive, Charles considered moving to Houston to work for a popsicle company, but he changed his mind after discovering a street vendor at a gas station. The shop was run by an Oaxacan named Gustavo, who produced corn chips. So Charles started a job at his shop. However, soon after that, Gustavo decided to sell his shop for $100 because he wanted to go to Mexico and teach soccer again. And as a fry cook for Gustavo, Charles eventually found himself learning something that would forever change his life. Efforts for his aim. The corn chips became Charles's addiction, and he regarded them as a treasure mine. He wanted to purchase the company, but did not have the necessary funds. Fortunately, his mother was confident that it would be a success and offered Charles her wedding ring in exchange for $80. On the other side, Charles was informed by Gustavo that he would pay the final $20 later. So, after buying the company, Charles renamed the corn chips Fritos and began creating them in his mother's kitchen with the assistance of his mother and the rest of the family. He traveled to the Midwest in his Model T Ford to persuade store owners to sell them. Since Fritos was only one of many brands of corn chips, it was difficult to sell, so Charles grabbed a job as a late-night snack maker to make enough money to go home. Later on, Fritos gained enough popularity, and Charles and his family struggled to keep up with the demand once Fritos sales finally began to increase. True entrepreneurial mind. At that time, Charles was using handheld potato ricers to make Fritos, which was a lengthy and laborious technique. So, Charles started thinking like a true entrepreneur, and he and his brother decided to build a machine using a hammer to mass-produce Fritos, since they had learned a lot about mechanical engineering from their father. And after all their hard efforts, they succeeded in inventing that device. From mother's kitchen to the house next door. After that, Charles began operating out of his mother's kitchen, then relocated to her garage, and finally the home next door. Later, he established 2 factories in Dallas and Tulsa, where he created new goods like Cheetos. Charles also began cultivating his corn, and he employed farmers all over Texas to plant various varieties until he discovered the one with the best flavors. It was the Fritos ingredient that led the business to grow. Got green light from Disneyland owner. However, Charles was not satisfied, and he wanted to do more than fill households with his products. He wanted to open his tail restaurant inside the happiest place on earth, Disneyland, and he succeeded in persuading Walt Disney to let him build a restaurant in Frontierland shortly after Disneyland first opened. Walt gave him the green light in exchange for corporate sponsorship, and the restaurant was called Casa de Fritos. It offered American and Mexican fusion food, including its well-known Frito chili pie. Untold truth about Doritos. Now, to find out the actual story behind the birth of Doritos, we will talk about the short story. When the Casa de Fritos was working at Disneyland, a man named Alex and his wife, who used to run a fast food service, won a contest to serve many of the restaurants within Disneyland, including Charles's Casa de Frito restaurant. It was around 1 year after Charles's passing, and Alex's food salesman threw away some leftover tortillas. Alex approached the cook and recommended that rather than tossing them out, he should fry them and turn them into tortilla chips. In place of tortilla chips at the time, Casa de Fritos offered free Fritos with its customers' meals. They never considered providing tortilla chips as the real Mexican eateries did, and the salesman's counsel was followed by the cook. Disneyland trash became a beloved snack. So, after adding a unique blend of seasonings, the leftover tortillas tasted much different than a typical tortilla chip. The clients were hooked after giving it a try, and without informing the Frito firm, Casa de Fritos added them to the menu as a staple. A year later, the Frito company merged with Lay, becoming the new Frito-Lay, which had $127 million in combined revenue and 4 primary products: Fritos, Cheetos, Lay's, and Ruffles. An outsider that gave the company new heights. Later on, a man named Arch joined the Frito-Lay Corporation in Dallas 1960. 2 years into his job, Arch took his wife and children to Southern California, and while driving, he spotted a tiny Mexican shack. He pulled over and ordered a small container of tortilla chips. They had a crunch to them and were unlike anything he had ever eaten before, which made Arch think of different uses for tortilla chips. When he got back to work, he gathered his other executives in a boardroom and presented his plan to flavor tortilla chips with various flavors and target specific market segments by developing regional flavors, which was challenging with Frito. But they made it very clear not to pursue the tortilla chip. Doritos, little pieces of gold. Arch privately paid his own money to an off-site facility to develop his idea because he was so sure about it. Arch then gave his new creation the name Doritos, which had already gained acceptance 2 years prior. For 2 years, Arch traveled to Mexico City to register the Frito trademark alongside the business's legal name. However, their application was denied. But Arch chose to stay rather than grab his belongings. After that, Arch started thinking about how the color of Fritos resembled gold more than anything else, and then he asked someone what gold was in Spanish, which he found to be oro. He felt it was missing something, so he asked what little was in Spanish, which he found to be ito. The 2 words paired together made him think of the letter D, and that he put in the beginning. That's how he came up with the name Doritos, meaning little pieces of gold. The idea that changed the whole story. Afterward, he tested the market in San Diego and also came up with a new plan for a second pitch. He would not only hand his colleagues samples, but finally got the green light to market them as being more than just tortilla chips, they were Doritos. When Arch made a second pitch, he told his colleagues that Doritos was sold recently in the Southwest, where people new to pointed tip could easily scoop globs of dip, whereas the rest of America didn't know. He refused to give up. He even suggested a riskier idea, which is to make Doritos taste like a taco. He instructed. His colleagues didn't understand the possibilities of flavor technology, which had become more advanced by then, and was one step ahead. However, Arch knew the flavor of a taco could be added to a tortilla chip and forced the company to expand. They gave in to his demands and launched taco-flavored Doritos a few years later. World's successful fast food invention. Ultimately, it not only won over Arch's colleagues, but also the rest of America, and paved the way for even more iconic flavors, nacho cheese and Cool Ranch. By 1991, Doritos became the biggest-selling line of Frito-Lay products, bringing in $1.3 million in revenue. Doritos sales were dominated by the nacho cheese flavor, which accounted for more than 60% of total sales. In 2013, Frito-Lay partnered with Taco Bell to release the Dos Locos Taco, and it sold at the rate of 1 million a day and became one of the most successful fast food inventions of all time. This was the story of how a Mexican tradition and the pursuit of the American dream led to the creation of one of the country's most beloved snacks. What is your opinion about how this snack became one of the most successful fast foods in the world? Please let us know in the comment box. For more inspiring stories and advice from today's most successful leaders, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.